Hello and welcome back to Grand Prix Atlanta. I'm Jacob Van Lunen and I'm being joined by the Ben Sek. We are about to watch Ben Stark play against Sergio Garcia. Sergio has the play here. He is playing a 4-color energy deck that is very black heavy.
Yeah, Sergio had an unfortunate set of mulligans, so he actually mulliganed twice, going down to 5. Ben kept his 7, so it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle. But Glinsley's Siphoner gives him a chance to maybe actually get back in the game card advantage-wise.
Yeah, so Ben Stark there has a Magma Spray to follow up his Soul Scar Mage. He's going to get in for 2 damage here. And both players seem to be playing on curve here. Sergio fails to find a 3rd land. Going to have to use this Attune with the Aether off the top of his library to find that 3rd land. Does he have a 2-drop to go along with it, or is this his whole turn?
I think this might be his whole turn, but he does have a Rogue Refiner, so that will actually get him another card back, kind of undo a little bit of the mulliganing, but it's still going to be a little bit rough. Actually, he might even have another Glintsleeve Siphoner, actually. Okay. Yep, he does.
So another Glintsleeve Siphoner coming down here. Ben really wanting to get that off the table before passing the turn back so that Sergio is unable to gain card advantage there.
Yeah, one of the important things, Ben's doing it on his turn, so he gets the Prowess trigger and does more damage. Sergio looks like he's going to attune yet again. I think he's going to not want to draw any more lands or attunes. He's likely to play his Rogue Refiner. Gets a Forest because I think he wants to make sure that he has, like, he doesn't use any energy to actually have to cast the Refiner.
It makes sense. So he wants to save that energy.
And it does look like he actually has a Will of Virtuoso in his hand, which means that that's why he wants to keep as much energy as possible to take advantage of that.
Well, so things working out pretty well here for Sergio. Ben Stark going up to his 4th land and has Chandra Torch of Defiance. Going to use that to kill the Rogue Refiner again for another 2 damage here with Soul Scar Mage. Let's see what Sergio's follow-up is.
Yeah, this is really, really good for Ben because Sergio does no way to pressure the Chandra. So if Sergio does not have a Vraska's Contempt, Chandra's going to start going up.
So Whirler Virtuoso coming down here for Sergio. And that's almost certainly going to be able to deal with the Chandra on the following turn because he has a whopping 10 energy to work with already thanks to casting a pair of Attune with Aether, a pair of Glintsleeve Siphoner, and a Rogue Refiner all before that Whirler Virtuoso.
Yeah, so he probably can make 3 Thopters. I don't think Ben is going to try too hard to defend his Chandra because at some point it's not going to be worth using all those resources to kill all those Thopters.
So Ben Stark revealing a Shock. This is kind of interesting here because he could either shock Sergio's face or shock the Whirler Virtuoso or just not use it and deal 2 damage as if he was shocking face, but by not using it, he's not getting the Prowess trigger on the Soul Scar Mage.
Yep. He's actually doing 2 damage to the Virtuoso. It's kind of just indicating it with that 2 on the 6-sided die. And he's attacking with the Soul Scar Mage. It's really hard to block because it has Prowess.
So Asher at the Fervent.
This is interesting. So Sergio is almost definitely going to have 2 of the Thopters attack. Might get him to remove the 2 die. Yep. That's right. Sorry, we were just corrected actually because of the Soul Scar Mage. That shock actually made them -2, -2, 2 -1 counters.
It's that Whirler Virtuoso not going to be tangoing well at all here. Will still serve as a valuable blocker to that Hazard at the Fervent, though. Ben Stark only playing 1 copy of Hazard at the Fervent in his main deck here. A very surprising part of his deck, to be sure.
But he really does seem to draw it quite a lot.
Yes, he does.
If you draw it as much as Ben has, you probably only need 1. You know,
I mean, drawing the second one feels pretty bad usually, to be honest. So I don't understand why we'd play more than 1.
Ben has more than 1 card in his hand, so he couldn't actually attack with Hazaret.
So Sand Strangler going to come down, killing a Thopter. Vraska's Contempt, exiling Hazaret. Pop Sergio back to 12 life.
Yeah, Sergio actually, like, kind of lasting not too bad against his double mulligan. Ben, while maybe slightly ahead, is only very slightly ahead.
I don't know. I feel like Ben is still pretty solidly in the driver's seat of this game. It is close, though. It is much closer than one would expect it to be.
Yep.
When one player mulligans to 5 and the other player's draw was as strong as Ben's was.
Yeah. Sergio continuing the offense. He knows that he needs to put some pressure on Ben, so attacks with the Thopter. He's enough energy to create another Thopter, so I think he's probably going to cash that in pretty soon because he's out of cards in hand, and I think he wants to make sure that he's taking advantage of like Ben being a little bit low on cards. But
wow. So a Lightning Strike getting revealed there off Chandra Torch of Defiance. That's going to deal with the Servant of the Conduit. Then Ben attacking with a 3/4 Soul Scar Mage and a 3/3 Sand Strangler.
Yes, Sergio with no good blocks, even if he creates another Thopter here. So if he does block, it's going to be a chump. The Will of Virtuoso can't profitably block because it is 0 power. It's a 0/1 because of the earlier shock and the Soul Scar Mage replacement.
Yeah, so now Sergio just falling to 6 there and not creating another Thopter on Ben's end step. He's only going to be able to attack the Chandra for 2 if he wants to attack it at all, and that would leave him dead to a lot of different things that Ben could have.
Yeah, I just want... I mean, maybe it's not right to make that Thopter, but I think you have to pressure that Chandra as much as you can because now... I mean, he's likely to still be very much on the back foot, but I think you had to really try and advance your board a little bit more than he has.
Yeah, I believe, did they not count the 1 Prowse trigger last turn? It's fine. Anyway, so Glorybringer coming down there for Ben after he used Chandra for mana, and he's going to use a Braid alongside the Exert trigger, and that is enough to win game 1.
Yep. Ben really taking advantage of the fact that Sergio mulliganed. They kind of went toe-to-toe resource-wise, but when you're 2 cards behind, it's really, really hard to catch up.
All right, so here we are in the other match. Lawrence Vess playing Mardu Vehicles, playing against Alex Llyod on Esper Approach. Lawrence Vess with an Aethersphere Harvester, Hazaret the Fervent, and Scrap Heap Scrounger in play. Alex Llyod has a Torrential Gear Hulk on the battlefield. It looks like Lawrence had an early advantage here, and he's trying to press that into victory, but Alex eking his way back in. When your opponent has a resolved Torrential Gear Hulk, it usually looks pretty bad.
Oh, and it looks like Alex must have cast an earliest Approach the Second Sun because that one that he just cast ended the game. So it looks like Esper Approach up 1 game versus Mardu Vehicles.
Yeah, both Lawrence Vess and Ben Stark playing 1 copy of Hazaret the Fervent in their deck.
That must be the secret ingredient to making top 8.
Yes. The top 4 includes exactly 2 copies of Hazaret the Fervent, split across 2 different decks here. And both of them drew it in game 1.
Yeah, look, as I say.
It did not seem very good for Andy, though, have to admit.
It looked like he got close. Alex actually was put down to 6, so I wonder if Hazaret was, threatening to kill Alex very, very soon. But obviously he had Approach the Second Sun. He'd already cast 1, so the game was over. You can see the players sideboarding with some deck lists in front of them. That's one thing that happens a little bit different in the top 8 compared to the Swiss rounds. They get to know exactly the build of their opponent.
Yeah, Sergio probably quite surprised seeing Ben Stark's version of this red deck.
Yeah, and
this is not what you're used to playing against. You play against the red deck.
I think that the interesting thing is, I think even seeing the sideboard, he may not know exactly how Ben is actually going to sideboard. I think that Ben really does like getting a lot of little edges, and I think the fact that he's chosen a set of a configuration that is a little bit like left of center means that he can maybe like trick Sergio into what kind of build he's bringing into the second game.
Yeah, and Ben's sideboard is also quite strange. For example, if Ben ends up playing against a deck like Mardu Vehicles in the finals, which is still a possibility, he has released the Gremlins. I haven't seen that card in some time. But if you're playing a Mardu Vehicles deck these days and your opponent has released the Gremlins in post-boarding games, you're not happy about that at all.
It's really interesting that he actually has to release the Gremlins because it's not like Mardu Vehicles has actually been a big force, and there's not that many decks that have a ton of artifacts. I mean, there's some that have a few here and there, but enough to bring in an X spell that kills artifacts. He must be really, really kind of worried about the Mardu Vehicles deck.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has made his deck weaker in that matchup than the other red decks.
Right.
However, you know, he made his deck stronger against the other red decks and energy decks, which seems like a pretty smart move for this weekend.
I think one of the reasons why you haven't seen that many release of Gremlins is Abrade has taken the spot. I mean, most decks have like 2 to 4 Abrades with red, and so you don't need that much more artifact removal. But Ben was telling me earlier he's played maybe 5 or 6 leagues with his deck, and I can only imagine he's probably lost to Mardu Vehicles quite a few times and, you know, decided to shore up that matchup.
Yeah. Seems very reasonable. Looks like both players mulliganing now.
Sergio having some really powerful sideboard cards. I don't know if he'll bring them in, but he actually has Nissa Vital Force, Nicol Bolas, Death Gorge Set Scavenger. He'll probably bring in the Death Gorge Scavenger because, you know, provides some life gain, gives him a little bit more like room to maneuver, and it's not a bad threat.
I doubt Nicol Bolas Godpharaoh is coming in the red matchup.
You know, maybe he knows something we don't.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
I did. You know.
Oh, so I mean, both these players are sideboarding here, or are mulliganing here, and usually when people are mulliganing, you're like, oh, well, that's a shame. In this standard format, 6 cards is not that different from 5 cards.
No.
Cards are so high impact. Games end so fast.
Yeah, and also when you combine it with the fact that they get 1 scry, I think going down 1 card is basically, you know, it's very rare that you get completely punished with it. I think if you go down to 2 or 3 more cards, I think that's a little tougher.
Yeah, once you start mulliganing down below 6, it starts to, you feel it.
Yeah.
But the first mulligan here, it's so important to have, you know, that 2-drop in this standard format that it's often worth sending back an otherwise reasonable 7 to make sure that you have, you know, a 2-drop to work with.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay. Looks at Sergio's. Luckily, he's got two land and a Servant of the Conduit, so I think he's probably keeping there.
It looks like he has a Fatal Push also with a black land that comes into play on tap. So a pretty nice hand there for Sergio from the looks of things.
Oh, speaking of going to 5, Ben not happy with his 6.
Yeah, another thing that's worth noting is that removal spells become more powerful the more that your opponent is mulliganing. You know, a successful draw in this standard format involves a combination of both threats and answers.
Yep.
And if you have the requisite amount of answers and your opponent has mulliganed a lot, then it becomes very hard for their draw to provide both offense and defense. And if they only have 1/2 of that game plan, then it's pretty hard to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Ramming at red, or just red decks, generally people are saying that they have a little more resilience to mulliganing because Hazoret, like herself, is, you know, wants less cards in hand. I think Ben's version of the deck is a little bit worse mulliganing just because he has a lot of mana hungry like spells in his deck.
All right, so a Bomat Courier there on turn 1 from Ben Stark. Getting pushed off the edge of a cliff there by Sergio Garcia. Servant of the Conduit there on turn 2 for Sergio. He's going to get 2 energy.
Yeah, Sergio looking to get ahead much earlier.
A Braid from Ben Stark. Board stays clear.
Okay, so he actually has a 3rd land. Death Gorge Scavenger, really, really, like, you know, it's a good threat and it gives life, which is really important in this matchup.
Yeah, so Sergio jumping back up to 22 here and getting a 3-2 body. Ben going to use a lightning strike to deal with that.
Definitely matching each other, kind of threat for answer.
Bomat Courier.
Bomat Courier, one of the ways that Ben is likely to get out of his double mulligan, just because it can produce some card advantage.
Ah, the most luxurious of lords, Gonti.
Yep.
Coming
Okay.
down here. Gonti quite strong in this red matchup. It's really, really nice to take a removal spell and or a Glory Bringer.
It's probably better as a Glory Bringer, who's a creature and a removal spell. I want to tell all the players out there, please, if someone plays Gonti on you, don't let them take the 4 cards off. You've got to wait for your opponent to actually give it to you.
Yeah.
Don't get your hands on my hat cards.
We'll call you the Claw. We're not above it. No, I'm joking. All right, so Para Bomat Courier is now getting in from Ben Stark after he clears the way with another lightning strike here. Bomat Couriers, you know, they don't attack for a lot of damage, but they do a lot otherwise. So now, Sergio. Is, you know, looking at what he's going to do. Doesn't have a 5th land here, so perhaps that is a Glory Bringer that he stole with that Gonti Lord of Luxury.
Yep.
Able to use Harness Lightning there to deal with the Bomat Courier that has 2 special packages underneath it. Another attack here for Ben.
Unlike the post office, Bomat Courier doesn't always deliver.
Tune with Ether here for Sergio Garcia. Going to search his library for a land. Grabs himself a swamp.
He does have a Vraska's Contempt in his hand, so that's probably the reason he goes for the swamp. He also has a couple other black, like double black cards as well.
It looks like he may actually have multiple copies of Vraska's Contempt here. He's going to go ahead and use one of those on Bomat Courier.
Yeah, no, this is a pretty aggressive play. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's aggressive. Ben still has cards in his hand, and that's a good reason to kill Bomat Courier right now. But, you know, Vraska's Contempt is one of the only ways that he has of like killing Hazoret or Chandra Tortured Defiance. So, you know, you really got to be careful about like using those.
So there's a Sand Strangler there for Ben. And it was a Glory Bringer, a luxurious Glory Bringer at that, coming down for Sergio here. And that's Ben Stark's own Glory Bringer, Traitorous Dragon.
Yep. It looks, wow.
Oof. And here is Nissa. I believe it's a Vital Force on the other side of the table.
I think this might have been brought in by Sergio because he was on the play. I actually I don't know how good this card is on the draw against a red deck, but he may have evaluated that he needs to actually, you know, get pretty aggressive, and Nissa definitely allows him to do that.
Yeah, Nissa also has a lot of loyalty, and you know, this surprises me though, because when I look at Ben's deck list, I imagine that it matched up well against planeswalkers and small creatures, and I think Sergio recognized that it matched up well against small creatures because it seems like the you know, the Glint Sleeve Siphoners, the Whirler Virtuosos, those types of cards, he hasn't really seen those, and those may have been sideboarded out.
Right.
He wanted to make the Sand Stranglers in Ben's deck quite a bit worse from the looks of things.
Yeah, no, I mean, he really hasn't like cast that many creatures that are good against Strangler. I mean, obviously he played Servant. You probably need to keep Servant because it's good enough. Death God Scavenger is obviously very powerful in this matchup, but we haven't seen a lot of other cards that are good to Sand Strangle.
So Glory Bringer there for Ben Stark. It's enough with that end step shock to finish off Sergio's Nissa Vital Force. And that is not an exerted Glory Bringer.
Important to note that Glory Bringers cannot kill each other with their exert trigger because there is a non-dragon clause there.
Yeah, so Ben falling to 7 here from this Glorybringer attack.
Okay. And Sergio a little bit further ahead, and he has removal spells in his hand.
Yeah, it looks like he has removal spells that can even kill the Glorybringer right now.
I think he's kind of trying to sit back and understand what's going on. And Vraska's Contempt really, really punishing Ben there. Ben had kept his Glorybringer back so he could actually trade with it, but Sergio does not want to let him do that.
Glorybringer getting in here, putting Ben down to a precarious 3 life. Whirler Virtuoso, a nail in Ben's coffin.
Yep, I think so. I believe that Ben is at 3, so
yeah, and that's going to be it. So forcing a game 3 right now.
Yeah, that mulligan hurt him. He really didn't draw that potent a hand to deal with one of the more powerful hands I've seen Sergio's deck deliver. I mean, Nissa Vital Force, a lot of Vraska's Contempts, really, really quite good in the matchup.
So let's take a look here at Sergio Garcia's sideboard. How do you think that he is likely sideboarding in a matchup like this? We know now that he's bringing in at least Nissa Vital Force, and an additional copy of Vraska's Contempt is likely.
Yeah. So Sergio has 3 negates, 3 duress, 3 scavengers, 2 defeats, so 2 Chandra's defeats, 1 Nissa Vital Force, 1 Nicol Bolas, 1 Contempt, 1 Appetite for the Unnatural. So I think the cards that he's definitely bringing in are the 3 Death Scourge scavengers, the 2 Chandra's defeats, and the Contempt. We also saw that he actually had a Vital Force, but I would tend to not put it in your deck on the draw because, one, it's a 5-mana spell that is a little bit soft to a board presence. So I think if Ben happens to get on the board, you really can't play Nissa for any good value. But I think the other cards are probably worth it. I don't think I'd bring in Negates. I don't think Duress is very good. Nicol Bolas is a little bit out of the question, and Appetite, I don't think there's enough targets for the Appetite. The extra Contempt I think is probably worth putting in just because life gain is also important, as well as getting rid of Hazoret or Chandra Tortured Defiance.
Yeah, that all definitely makes sense. We're taking a look at his main deck. There are some cards that look like they could be really weak in this matchup that he's able to take out here. I think Hostage Taker is, the number 1 offender here as a 2/3 for 4 mana that doesn't gain much advantage against Ben's deck, who post-board is just chock full of cards that are dealing 3 damage for 2 mana at instant speed.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, he has Sand Strangler too. So, if he doesn't actually play the Hostage Taker with enough mana to cast the spell immediately, he runs the risk of the Strangler actually returning the creature. On Ben's side, he has only a couple cards I think he'd bring in. I think he's definitely bringing in the Glorybringer. He has a Glorybringer in the sideboard. He has another Ferocidon. I think those 2 are very good. A Braid probably kills enough stuff, as well as Cut the Ribbons. Ben actually is playing Cut the Ribbons with no visible black mana in his deck, but he technically can cast the Ribbons part of his deck if he gets his treasure map unlocked. If he gets to the cove, he can sack 2 treasure and actually play the Ribbons part. I don't think he's done it this tournament, but it's a technical possibility.
I want to know if he's done that this tournament. I'm going to ask him.
I kind of want to see it in the feature match. Yeah. That'll be.
I want to see that this game. This game, I want to see. Although I don't think Cut to Ribbons is getting brought in here. I think Cut to Ribbons is more specifically for, opponents that are playing things that have 4 toughness.
That's true.
He has a lot of spells that deal 3, and when your opponent's playing things that have 4 butts, it's a little bit better to have Cut Ribbons.
Yeah, but I think he'd probably bring in the 2 Hazarets. I think they're pretty good in this matchup. The Chandras are pretty good in the matchup. The Glorybringer and probably the Ferocidon. I'm thinking. I don't know he's going to bring in his 4th Braid. In fact, he may actually take out one of his Braids because there's no artifact targets, and he has so many ways of doing 3 damage.
Yeah, that's definitely reasonable, especially after how we saw Sergio sideboard in the game prior. Here we are watching the other semifinal match. This is Game 3. Lawrence, or Andy Vess, is playing Mardu Vehicles, and he's up against Alex Llyod with his Etspur approach deck. Lawrence off to a pretty fast start here. It looks like he has a Heart of Kieran and a Toolcraft Exemplar. All right, well, it looks like the main match is going again, so we're going to jump over there and check out more action of Ben Stark against Sergio Garcia.
Okay.
All right, here we are. Ben Stark getting things started with Kari Zev after his Beaumont Courier was fatally pushed.
So it looks like Sergio kept in some of his hostage takers.
A braid there for Sergio, able to deal with that Kari Zev before Ben has an opportunity to attack and make a friendly monkey. But I spoke too soon.
I think Sergio, no, he does. He does not have a third land, and he's kind of forced to rely on Servant to try and get that mana. But
oh wow! And here, 2 spells in 1 turn from Ben Stark. That Magma Spray dealing with Servant of the Conduit. Now Ragavan joining Kari Zev in the combat zone.
But Ben does not have a spell to play on his 4th turn, which is really, really unfortunate. But Sergio's still not drawing an extra land.
Yeah, and this likely means that, here comes Glorybringer. And
Sergio can actually kill the Glorybringer with his Harness Lightning in his hand, but he's going to use pretty much all his energy because he doesn't have a red mana to, naturally, he'll have to use either hub, going down to 1 energy, but the lightning produces another one.
Yeah, it looks like he may also have a Chandra's Defeat.
Okay. I see what he's doing here. He's actually using the Harness Lightning because he also has a Chandra's Defeat in his hand, as you said, and that kills Glorybringer with 1 shot.
Yeah, but now with just, a pair of Glorybringers. Chandra's Defeat dealing with 1 of them, but Sergio's life total quickly dwindling. Sergio now with 1 land that produces colorless mana to go with that Servant of the Conduit. And
I can see the Glorybringer being exerted. Really wants to keep Sergio mana light as possible. He knows that Sergio does not have that many low-costing spells because last turn.
Yeah, but he's going to go ahead and use a removal spell on that Servant of the Conduit instead to cut the clock down by a full turn. Sergio now just 4, only 1 more attack for Glorybringer to end the game. And it looks like Ben Stark is going to the finals. Oh my goodness gracious, another unnecessary dragon.
Yeah, no, Sergio just a little bit disappointed with his mana draw, but he could be really proud to actually make the semifinals. Really, really tough tournament.
Yeah. Super exciting there. Ben Stark with, I like calling it Desert Red. It's funny because Remenap Ruins is a desert, but his deck is even more desert-centric than Remenap Ruins is. Remenap Red was.
Yeah, but it's different in its approach on how, speaking of approach, it looks like Alex just drew an approach.
And it's a good one.
Yep. He does not have the 7th land, though.
Yeah, Lawrence Vess, however, does have 7 lands in play, and I doubt he wants to have 7 lands in play playing Mardu Vehicles, so...
Though he does have a Hazoret in his hand. I think Alex is thinking about whether he wants to counter the... Nope, just let the heart there.
Wow, going for this Glorybringer after that. Heart of Kieran.
Okay.
Running into a Torrential Gear Hulk there, and Torrential Gear Hulk is going to exile...
Oh, yep, it was Settle the Wreckage that was in the graveyard of Alex, so...
Oh, well, that's an explanation for why Andy had so many lands in play here.
Yes. So he gets another 2 land, which he doesn't really want. But he was a little canny. He actually didn't cast his Hazoret because he knew that it was a possibility. Because he could have casted the Glorybringer or the Hazoret and attacked. And now that he chose the Glorybringer, Hazoret is now free to attack this turn without a Survey the Wreckage, at least in the graveyard. Though I think that Alex has a Survey the Wreckage in his hand.
Oh my goodness, another Settle the Wreckage?
Yeah, sorry.
So here's Hazoret the Fervent coming down Toolcraft Exemplar likely going to trigger and then activate this Heart of Kieran at the beginning of combat for Andy. And then Andy, I imagine, is going to send in for 9 damage here. I can't imagine there's any other play.
I think, no, he's actually pretty canny here. He only attacks with the heart because he doesn't want to get completely blown out by the Settle the Wreckage that he's predicting is in Alex's hand.
Wow, I'm very impressed with people's ability to show...
and that's interesting too. Alex actually could have played his Approach the Second Sun, but actually just wants to keep up his Settle the Wreckage. I'm not sure if that's the right way to approach it, because he's still able to block with the Gear Hulk, and I feel that he might want to get that approach clock started as soon as possible.
Now Lawrence shrinking down his deck size and making sure he draws fewer and fewer lands right now.
Okay. Now I think without having to hold up the Settle the Wreckage.
There comes Approach the Second Sun.
Yep.
And Alex Llyod jumping up to 16 here. Likely going to just pass the turn back to Lawrence. And so the approach begins.
Yes. I think Lawrence wants to get some shades so he doesn't get blinded by that sun.
Yeah, so Hazaret being activated here.
Yeah, but not really the most efficient way of getting Alex down. I mean, he can clearly block the Hazaret with his Gear Hulk. The Toolcraft Exemplar does not have an artifact. Oh, good draw. But he does not have an artifact, actually, as we just said.
Yes, so that's 6 damage coming in, though. Alex Llyod here going to fall to 8. And, it could have been 3 had he had an artifact.
If he has another Gear Hulk, there's another Settle the Wreckage in the graveyard. So,
interestingly enough, Lawrence Vess, despite having 10 lands in play right now, does not have access to black mana.
Had to use an energy off his Aether Hub. So Alex is trying to so he's got a Glimmer of Genius. He's trying to figure out whether he should cast at main phase, because if he does cast at main phase, he has an opportunity to get an untapped land and maybe a Settle. But if he does, he also kind of leaves himself open. He's got an Opt as well and a Fumigate, but a Fumigate is not very good against this Hazaret the Fervent.
Yeah, Fumigate actually underwhelming against Mardu vehicles in general.
All right.
Because...
Oh, great draw by Alex. Alex just drew a Cast Out, a perfect card for him right now.
That is absolutely perfect. I think that may just lock up the game here.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lawrence needs to definitely draw an artifact just so he can attack for 3, put Alex down to 5, and then somehow find the rest of that damage. Because he's almost definitely going to cast the Fumigate the following turn. Chandra is a really, really good draw too. Wow. So,
yeah.
Actually, I think that it's probably one of the best things that Lawrence could have drawn, because the Chandra is immune to the Fumigate and still provides some amount of damage.
Yeah, it is, however, only a matter of time before Alex finds his second copy of Approach the Second Sun.
I think Alex may actually just play the Fumigate so he can gain 1 life and then take off the clock of the Exemplar, and preventing the possibility of an artifact coming off the top of Lawrence's deck.
Yeah, I mean, if he does not, he's going to have to do something at instant speed if there's an artifact on the top of Lawrence's deck here.
Yeah, I mean, he has a Glimmer, so there's something. Motorist. Motorist doesn't provide a artifact straight away, but the funny thing is it does allow him to scry 2, which actually allows him to choose which card to put on top with his Chandra if it's good enough to cast.
Yeah, so he's going to... both in the bottom, reveals a Rampaging Ferocidon, and now he has to decide whether or not it's more worthwhile for him to play this Rampaging Ferocidon or for him to deal 2 damage to Alex Llyod. And it's actually more advantageous for him to deal 2 damage to Alex Llyod. He doesn't know that for sure, though. This is a really, really hard nut to crack if you're in Andy's seat, because it almost certainly would feel like that 3-3 would be better than just 2 damage. But Lawrence, very wise decision here, decides, no, my opponent has Fumigate in his hand, and I know he has Fumigate in his hand.
I actually think this this Glimmer of Genius actually puts him right to the Approach the Second Sun. So Alex likely just casting it next turn. Yep.
I think it may have been 1 card deeper, but still, he found one anyway.
Let me get off it. Okay.
All right. So it looks like we are on to the finals now. And in the finals, this is a pretty exciting finals for us. We have Alex Llyod playing Esper Approach of the Second Sun, and he's going to be facing off against Hall of Famer Ben Stark, playing a medium version of Ramanap Red. We'll be right back after these messages. This is Jacob Van Lunen signing off with Ben Stark.